And so the pains of the love triangle begin. We're already getting into heartbreaks. Technically, it's 5 episodes in, so we're getting pretty far into this series already, but yeah, should have seen it coming. It was already in the works, and I'm actually very surprised, though. I mean, technically having Akishino take that kind of a leap that quickly, girl's a forward girl, I swear. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the 5th episode of Remake Our Life, so let's jump right into it. So yeah, of course, with this episode, they start up the festival for their school. Everybody's doing different kind of showings and all that kind of stuff. Actually, kind of an odd thing having some of the characters doing, I mean, technically talked about wanting to do a maid cafe before, but I guess they're part of an arts culture type of club, so having some sort of artistic maid cafe makes perfect sense. It's just an excuse to get the girls in maid outfits. You know that's the case. I mean, literally having Keiko come out of nowhere like, oh yeah, I'm in a maid outfit also because you guys were short on people. Like, yeah, sure. Just got to get all the girls in maid. I'm surprised they didn't get Eiko in one and maybe even Sensei into one, but we got most of the cast inside of maid outfits, so that's all that matters at this point. But it was cute to have Eiko kind of show up, and she was going to apologize to Nanako, but he's like, you don't technically need to apologize because what you did essentially gave her that boost. She's now having actual lessons to learn singing and all that kind of stuff. Koya is actually putting her videos of singing onto the internet now, which we find out later is doing pretty well. She's doing... he said something like over 10,000, but I think it said 20,000. So pretty significant viewership on her videos for sure. Now this is where we get into my... I swear I'm onto something here, and I think I had some doubters comment on it, but I'm pretty significantly sure at this point this is going to be the case. It's kind of an oddity for sure why exactly this would play out the way that it did, but essentially Koya was with Akishino and they were at a art showing at the actual festival, and he ends up finding an art piece. And this art piece, he says, it's very well composed. It's something that would definitely fit with her kind of styling. And he, at that point, sees the name Yamashina Kazu, and this messes with him. He suddenly becomes very kind of dizzy in the head and falls over and passes out. Now, you could chop this up as, yes, he was overworked at this point, very tired, and this was kind of just the point in which he finally gave up. It's kind of what they're implying based on what Akishino's saying to him, you're tired and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the fact that he's running into this Yamashina Kazu, okay, so let me backpedal. I'm saying this is the proof in what the infinite loop aspect. Now, it technically puts a wrench into my thought process. My thought process, for those that did not see my last impressions, is that this is going to be an infinite loop aspect where in episode 1, when we see him in the future timeline, before he went back in time, he sees the Platinum Generation doing this certain game, and they're all together, and that's when he starts kind of mulling over the idea that he wished that he could be a part of this. And now that he's back in time and he's now with the Platinum Generation, he's now finally acknowledged that Nanako is Nana. So we have at least 2 of the Platinum Generation people are they're technically in his love triangle at this point. Akishino, who was the character designer, and Nanako, who is the theme song writer. We don't have the scenario writer yet, but my thought process was that in the future timeline, before he went back in time, there was another Koya who was in that timeline who pushed all these girls to become the Platinum Generation. And now that he's back in time, it feels like he's having to push these girls back into those places again. So it begs the question, if Koya wasn't here, how would these all still play out? Akishino, he had to push her to being a character designer. So why would she be a character designer in the future? Nanako, he's having to push her and force her to be a singer, but she's already a singer in the future. So what was that playoff? And what my theory was is that it's an infinite loop, that there is a Koya in the future timeline just under a different name, and he doesn't know about him because magic. So, no, but the only thing that kind of throws a wrench in this is that if this Yamashina Kazu is so important that it's affecting him in some way, that maybe the possibility that Yamashina Kazu was the Koya of the future. Like, because he's forcing himself into this group and becoming this rock or this pillar that pushes them in this direction, Yamashina Kazu is no longer necessary for that role. And so my point being that in the future timeline, before he went back in time, Yamashina Kazu might have been the Koya that pushed these girls to the direction they needed to go. But we'll see. It is kind of a weird thing to throw into the mix, that it doesn't make much sense to why it would affect him and why there would be this other person that would be in play, unless, again, there's another Koya specifically, and his pen name is Yamashina Kazu, which I doubt that. That seems a little bit obscure at this point. But yeah, so it kind of plays into my thought process, but not necessarily Koya specifically. That this Yamashina was the Koya of his past time, and he's essentially altered this Yamashina Kazu's person's life to becoming just a painter. He's no longer with Akishino, and Nanako being that pillar that pushes them in that direction. Of course, following the scene, we have him getting a lap pillow from Akishino, and this is the point where she's like, basically reaffirming the idea that she's very grateful of the push that he gave her, like helping her realize that she can still do this. And she nearly kisses him, and thank you, Phone-kun, for popping up out of nowhere. That trope rears its head. Phone rings right before they kiss. This is a tease because I was like, are we really doing this? But thankfully, like, they still have the kiss at the end of the episode, so it still happens, but it was like, are we really doing this? But yeah, he gets a phone call, and for some reason, I guess apparently he's part of the main, I guess, leadership for the entire festival, because they had to call him in to figure out what they're going to do, because their concert lost its last singer, and he goes there and says, as we're all saying, there we go, he's going to push Nanako to do it. He's like, no, that's all right, we have Nanako. Nanako could do it. Nanako's like, no, wait, no, I can't. What are you talking about? And she ditches. But he ends up, of course, coming to her and saying, look, you can do this. And I really didn't like this things leading up to this scene, because it frustrated me in how he's pushing her so much. And it's like, I agree with Koya on the idea of her not giving up on her dreams. I agree with Koya on the idea of giving her the encouragement that she needs, giving her that push. She needs it, and she can obviously do it. But this is like one of those little points where you reach that limit, that barrier, like you're crossing over the line into being too much. She's pushing herself, she's learning, but you're pushing her too much. But obviously his mentality is that I've experienced this in my previous life. I had those moments where I should have stepped forward. I should have took that chance, and now I regret it. I don't want her to have that moment where she says, I wish I did this. I want her to never think that. And so that's obviously why he's pushing her. And it is cute in the idea that he essentially shows her, look, you've technically sung in front of over 10,000 people. You can manage a couple hundred people. It's fine. So yeah, that's obviously the boost she needs. It was cute. They're essentially pointing out the idea that they're mulling over these comments. And yeah, there's negative comments, but they're finding the comments that are suggesting things like, you need to do this. This is what your problem is. There is people giving feedback, not only to support, not only to be negative, but also to say, you could do better if you maybe did this, to give her suggestions on what she needs to do to improve, which is really cool. Essentially crowdfunding lessons. But yeah, of course, this was the point in which he finally realizes, like we've all realized from episode 2, that she is Nana. So that was great. And she sung God Knows, which is, of course, the big famous song from Suzumi Haruhi, which was really cool. They've been doing that quite a bit in this series, is these... You would assume they're only going to pull from things that are from Front Wing, because obviously this is a Front Wing series. But no, they're actually branching out to a lot of more popular titles around that time frame, which I think is really fantastic. I think I give them a lot of credit for being able to get out there and get those licenses to put into for this show to really kind of sell that time frame. I will say, don't discredit the fact that Tsurayuki decided to do a clown act before her to kind of hold things up. I really, as much as like, I'll be honest, because like I said, we have this love triangle thing now, so let's get this out of the way. Of course, yeah, following this, apparently Akishino was having some kind of problem, so Koya took her away from the concert when she was going to do an encore. Took her away from the concert, gave her something to drink, and asked her if she was okay. And this is the point where she stands up, really cute. She's like, we're the same height right now because you're sitting down. And that's when she just jumps in there and gives him a kiss. says that the festival's kind of, she blames the festival for getting her, worked up for it. But yeah, she's taking the initiative. She's jumping in there and claiming Kyoya. So yeah, it's obviously cute. It's obviously, I'm all for Akishino. And this is the thing, it's like I'm not really technically gunning for something right now. I obviously, the issue comes in, Nanako has been such a focus in this series. It's the Sakura Sao effect, where you have a character who becomes such a focus of the show's attention that it makes you wonder why any other option is a thing. Nanako and Kuya have been through so much together. He's nurtured her gift so much that obviously she cares for him, and you obviously feel that care. Whereas on the other side, you don't really see much attention to Akishino at this point. Obviously, we've seen scenes where they go to the festival together. We've seen the scenes where he's encouraged her twice so far to keep what she's doing. He's expressed how much he likes what she does and wants her to keep going. So it's not as if Akishino does not have screen time and that there's no bonds there. It's just that the show itself is dead so focused on Nanako's story. The last 2 episodes has been her story. I even joked in my last impressions that it's Remake or Nanako. And me personally, I'm not Team Nanako or Team Aki. I honestly think Aki is adorable. I love Nanako's story. So it's not that I have an attachment one way or another, but it is still heartbreaking in the idea of how much of a focus you can have on one thing, but then just essentially let another character take the jump. It's a sad reality in a lot of these types of shows where we have such a huge fandom for, the Team Nanako or Team Aki. I mean, it was in the case with a lot of other shows. I mean, think Darling in the Franxx, that whole debacle. Thankfully, I don't think we're gonna see like the levels of anger that we got from Darling in the Franxx that we got here, because unfortunately, I don't think this show is getting as much attention as Darling in the Franxx technically was, but I wish it would. This is a really fantastic series that deserves it. I don't know. It's like I love Aki's character. I love her artwork they've shown already. I love her as a character. I love her voice. Her soft, gentle voice is adorable. And yeah, at the same time, I love Nanako and her more abrasiveness. I love her energy that she has, the stories, and like I said, the adventures that we've already gone through with her character. So it is a struggle. But at the same time, the thing that allows me to be okay with this Aki thing is that I'm already shipping Shiryuki with her. Like, Nanako's not going to be... I mean, yeah, granted, it's going to be heartbreaking for Nanako because she's attached herself so much with Koya. Koya has been her rock, her pillar, the thing that has pushed her to seek out her dreams. Now, granted, you can put Eiko in there as well, which I'm perfectly fine with shipping Eiko and Nanako at this point. I'm perfectly fine with an Eiko-Nanako pairing, but you've already had this very subtle support from Shiryuki. And the show itself isn't necessarily pointing that out, but it's there. Nanako doesn't just have Koya. Nanako has had the support of somebody else, and that's Shiryuki. Shiryuki has always been there, technically, from the very beginning, before even Koya was there. He has been there, yes, very much so combative with her. Like, they've always been kind of throwing stuff at each other on a regular basis, but he's there, and he was supporting. He did do things to support her. He was on the sideline. I mean, with this particular episode, you had him technically holding off the crowd until she got there. You had him essentially telling people, no, I know her. She's going to be here. I trust that she's going to be here. So, like I said, you do technically have somebody there as a fallback for Nanako. And I am curious what it's going to end up turning into. Is it a thing where Nanako does get her heart broken because he is with Akishino, and then she just chooses to, I guess, shut herself in because of this heartbreak, and then Shiryuki is there to support her to bring her back out of it? I am really curious. Is it going to be a thing where she realizes that she's only really likes him because he supported her? That she's not necessarily romantically interested in him. It's just that she really does like him as a friend. I'm not sure. But it's still heartbreaking. It is still truly heartbreaking. I'm almost not looking forward to episode 6 because I know what it's going to be. Episode 6 is just going to be like just heartbreak, sadness, crying. Yeah, it's going to be harsh. It's going to be really harsh. And I really hope that it's not going to be a case where Koya is going to be absolutely dumb about this. That's the fear. Honestly, this has been a really fantastically and refreshing show in the idea that it's very adult. And I really commend the storytellers for doing a university story. And I really do wish there was more university stories in anime, because I think university is a great time period. As much as I like my cute girls doing cute things, as much as I love my cute characters, high school and as so often middle school with these anime shows, it's hard to really do things with those characters. Yes, they're perfect shows for the sake of that time period is where kids are shaping their minds. That's where they're making their life decisions. That's where they're shaping their opinions. And I still think university is a time where that can happen. I still think that this time period is perfect because you both have a mix of characters can still change their minds on things. They can still shape their personalities and their opinions, but they're also adult enough that you can get into adult comments. You can have a character kiss somebody. Oh my gosh, we have 5 episodes into a series, we already have a kiss. That's like, I almost thought they were going to mosaic her lips, because obviously that's way too much for anime. You cannot have kissing or even hand-holding for that nature. And they're doing it here because this is an adult story, and you can get into this stuff. And I'm perfectly fine with that. But the problem at the same time, it makes those love triangles even more painful, because you have a commitment that's happening. You have this thing that's happened between these two characters that is almost a solidifying of a commitment to another character. Nanako sees this and goes, they're in a relationship, it's over. Whereas any other time it's, oh, well, you like him too? Well, I'm not going to give up. There was no kiss there, so I'm perfectly fine with it, because obviously a kiss is a marriage. But it's refreshing, and I really do like it. I'm looking forward to... Well, I just said that I'm not looking forward to episode 6, but I'm looking forward to more of this show. Really am loving it. Curious to see who this Yamashina Kazu is, if it's going to get into it right now, or if we're going to have to wait for a while before we get into it, but it is what it is. I've talked way too much. This has been a long video, but a lot to talk about in this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed my impressions. As always, if you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Who you think Yamashina Kazu is. Subscribe if you haven't already. Are you Team Nanako? Are you Team Akishuna? Be very be respectful in the comments. I don't want a big flame war between the teams, but yeah, you all take care.